welcome back, everybody. I don't know if you've noticed I might have lost a few pounds. That's because I'm on the Oprah diet. If you haven't heard of it, it's the diet of turning the TV on, watching her disgusting butt, and then not wanting to eat afterwards. It does wonders. Let's get into this chapter now, shall we? This chapter is not a hate crime. Racism is a topic we never get tired of discussing in this country. Here's my semi-offensive take on racism. First of all, we have to admit that there's a certain amount of cultural pride that is inherent in all human beings. If you turn on the television and there's a boxing match on, you'll usually root for the guy who looks most like you. But if you find out that the guy who looks less like you is from your hometown, you may start rooting for him. Or if the guy who isn't your ethnicity was pronounced dead after an incident at a public pool when he was only 9 and has beaten the odds of VIE for the welterweight championship, for me it doesn't take much. If the guy who looks like Wesley Snipes is the underdog and the guy who looks like Greg Brady is unbeaten, I know that's never going to happen. I'll be rooting for the black guy, because I always root for the underdog. All things being equal, every bit of history aside, people are going to root for the person who looks most like them. I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm just saying it's built into us and we should just accept it. Our racist culture. The left would like us to believe that we're living in a racist culture. Well, the highest paid person on TV, Oprah, is black and possibly even female. The highest paid movie star is Will Smith. The highest paid singer is Beyonce. The highest paid athlete pre-divorce is Tiger Woods. And of course, the guy who leads the country. These people all live in is black. Permit me to do Dr. Seuss on your asses for just one moment. What if there was a planet where 90% of the population were white sneetches and 10% of the planet were black sneetches? But the highest paid performers and athletes, and I don't just mean for what they do on the field, I'm also talking about endorsements, and the leaders of all the sneetches, as voted on by the entire sneetch population, were black sneetches. And what if I went on to tell you how racist the white sneetches were? Wouldn't you stop and say that doesn't make sense? How racist could they be? For every real racist, there are 25 guilty white guys trying to undo what that guy and his grandfather did and actually be nicer. If a white guy cuts me off, I shout, "Fuck you, motherfucker." But if a black guy cuts me off, I don't say anything. A, because he's packing, and B, because I don't want him to think I'm doing it just because he's black. Racist or asshole? I have a theory that's going to sound convenient because I'm white male, but if it bothers you, who stole this book will hear me see that it's a racial joke. I'll attempt to explain why it feels like there are so many racists in our society. You're confusing assholes for racists. First, let's talk about driving while black and the LAPD. The LAPD are basically assholes to everyone they pull over, and I've been pulled over for everything from not having a front license plate to flicking a cigarette ash out the window, not throwing a cigarette butt out the window, but flicking an ash out the window. And not in Malibu during fire season, in Hollywood in November. I had a cop pull me over on my motorcycle and tow it when I begged him to let me push it in and park it on the side of the street and leave it there. He said tough shit. And while I was hitchhiking home, I saw my motorcycle pass me on the back of a tow truck. I once got a jaywalking ticket in a crosswalk because the cop said I'd begin walking after the light started blinking. Don't walk. I arrived on the other side so far in advance of the light changing that the asshole motorcycle cop had time to cross the intersection behind me and light had still yet to change. You think the LAPD picks and chooses who they pull over and who they're assholes to based on the color of their skin? Now, I've never tried to outrun a cop in my car and been caught, but I'm sure if I tried and was caught, they'd beat the shit out of me. The same way they beat the shit out of the brothers. I'm not saying there are no racist LAPD. What I'm saying is there's an army of assholes on the LAPD and you think are racist because you're black. If I was black, I could draw no other conclusion than that the cop who wrote me the jaywalking ticket was a racist. Let's move from cops to fellow citizens. In almost every home I've lived in, I've had a run-in with an unreasonable neighbor, calling the cops every time I had a party, accusing me of things I didn't do. I won't bore you with all the details, but let's just call it general douchebaggery. But here in one specific example, I have a home now that when I bought it was dilapidated, rat infested mess. I dumped almost $1 million and a ton of sweat equity into it, and I turned it from an eyesore into a palace. I have an old man who lives next to me, an old white guy. There is a hedge between our two homes. It's not growing into the sewer pipes. It's not obstructing his view. It's not doing anything except offering little privacy. But he called the Department of Building and Safety on me. He didn't come and talk to me. He called Building and Safety, who sent over a letter and then an inspector. The neighbors even checked the box that said unsanitary living conditions, despite the fact that my house is pristine. So I said to the guy, "Why do you have an issue with this hedge?" And he screamed, "It's above regulation height." I replied, "So is every hedge on this hill. Most people like it that way. Next time, instead of getting the city involved, ring my buzzer, tell my gardener, or just leave a note saying, 'Hey, the hedge is a little too high. Please have your guy cut it.'" 4 months later, I got another summons from the Department of Building and Safety for a court appearance, and it hasn't stopped. It just got another super shitty letter from him, and the other day he threatened me about the hedge. Fortunately, I have the great privilege of being white, and thus the knowledge that this guy is just an old fuck and not a racist. If I was black, Hispanic, Asian, or even Jewish, I would have no choice but to assume he was a racist, and I don't think any reasonable person would disagree. Here's my final synopsis. Again, I'm not saying there are no racists. I'm just saying you're inflating the numbers by mistaking a lot of assholes for racist. These shitty neighbors, cops, $9 an hour dickheads behind counters, rude garage attendants aren't racist, they're assholes. I wish they were racist. As a rich white guy, that would make my life a lot easier. People need to understand the difference between passively racist people and actively racist people. Every guy I know loves a race joke. Well, he'll use derogatory terms to get a laugh, and probably has thoughts that range everywhere from "I hope there's not a bunch of Middle Eastern guys on my flight" to "I'd rather a Japanese family bought the house next door than an Israeli family." Our society would love to label the bigots and racists, but my point is, unless they've ever acted on any of these thoughts, who gives a shit? If you call a fat guy fat and when he's not in the room and never say anything to his face, and you don't have any policies against hiring fat people, then what's wrong with a fat joke as long as Fatty McMarty isn't within earshot? I believe this country is filled with people of all ethnicities who like to toss around racially insensitive jokes and racial epithets, but would never do anything to harm, degrade, or deny employment to anyone because of their race. I'm sure many people reading this book at some point in their life wish that someone was dead, but that doesn't make you a murderer. Killing somebody makes you a murderer. Making a Pollock joke doesn't make you a racist. Not hiring a Pollock makes you a racist. And writing a book where you say a Pollock doesn't make you a racist either. I'd argue that the guilty white liberals in this country are actually more racist. Take the example of drugs coming from Mexico. The left is basically apologizing to Mexico and explaining that it's our consumption of these drugs and creating the market and funding their corrupt government, police, and army. It's not the drug dealer's fault, it's our fault for consuming the drugs. Then why are these same people coming down on the tobacco industry? They just manufacture the product, we create the market. If nobody smoked, they'd be out of business. And what about a gun manufacturer? The lefties don't like that very much either, yet all they do is make a product. So why does Mexico get a pass while Philip Morris and Smith & Wesson don't? Race is the answer. Two of them are rich and white. One of them is poor and brown, and it's always Whitney's fault, or Whitey's fault. Well, constantly complaining about racism, they edge in the ultimate racism. They treat Mexico as if they are inferior and incapable of governing themselves. If these drugs were coming out of Canada, they wouldn't be blaming the U.S. They would instead insist that Canada fix the problem, and fast. It's belittling and far more racist, just like when the news reported about what was going on in the Superdome after Katrina. Every rich Manhattan honky I knew was shouting, "There are 3-year-olds being gang raped," but Bush isn't doing anything. If the Superdome had been filled with white people, your question wouldn't be, why isn't Bush doing anything? It would be, why the F, or what is wrong with these effing people? And why are the charges of racism only directed at white people? Not too long ago, Miley Cyrus got in trouble for a picture where she pulled her eyes back to do an Asian squinty eyes thing. But what about Japanese anime, where all the white people have enormous round eyes? Sure, we do an exaggerated version of what we think Asian eyes look like, but they draw ours in a caricature too. Our eyes are rounder than theirs, but they don't look like dinner plates. Each one is an exaggeration, so why was Miley Cyrus raked over the coals while Speed Racer got a free pass? Because we don't give a shit. We don't have a chip on our shoulder. Us round eyes have a sense of humor, which perhaps we shouldn't export. Diversity seminars. Not only does every employee of every corporation have to sit through a bullshit sexual harassment seminar, they also have mandated to we have 3 hours of their lives stolen for a diversity and racial sensitivity seminar. I had to sit through these when I was working for CBS Radio. They always do a question and answer thing at the end of this garbage, and I declared to my lackeys that no one could ask my questions or I would fire their asses. The more questions asked, the longer we were going to be stuck in that room. Ironically, I then ended up dragging the thing out because I eventually reached the tipping point and couldn't handle the bullshit being piled on. The woman conducting the seminar, who looked like Maya Angelou with the giant amber beads and moo-moo, posed this retarded question. A Hispanic male robs a liquor store. The only information the news has is that he is Hispanic and male. Should they mention his ethnicity? At this point, you, like me and every other rational person, are thinking, of course, whatever is necessary to get the word out and catch this guy. But I kept my mouth shut. Florida, for good times, declared no. His ethnicity should not be mentioned because there are too many Hispanic males in Los Angeles. 20,000 more slipped in while you were reading this sentence. To say the fact would draw suspicion on Hispanic male in the population at the moment, I hit my saturation point with Aretha Franklin's less talented sister and asked, then why are you bringing up that he's male? I'm male. I don't want to get lumped in with the liquor store robbers. Her response was as stupid as her original point. But he was a white male. But he was a male. I shot back. He's Mexican too. Why do we have to ignore the fact but not the fact that he's got a dick and balls? Take that, Cinco de Mayo, Angelou. Everyone earns it. So let's drop the act and just face the fact that as a race, you earn your stereotype. We're supposed to celebrate our differences, but as soon as somebody points out that some of those differences are negative, that person gets called a racist. It's an all or nothing attitude that causes the problem. Ironically, the Berkeley educated white folk who attack me and say, not all black men are in prison and not all Muslims are men of terror, are the first ones to get the petition going to have a peanut-free school because one kid has an allergy. Not all the kids have a peanut allergy, so why should all of them suffer? I'm not saying all of this group or all the people, but some of this group and enough of these people. As I stated earlier, whether you are a car company or a race, you earn your reputation. Don't believe me? Take a look at this chart of ethnic stereotypes. I will show it to you and you could pause it and check it out and see if you could handle it. Okay, back to the book. If you believe there is no truth to stereotypes, then nothing in that chart seemed odd. But admit it, you effing hypocrite, you laughed. My everybody earns it theory extends to the gays, who technically aren't a race, but screw it, it's close enough. They've been anti-defamation leagues, their own parts of the city, and parades. That's enough to qualify as a race. Plus, gay is its own race because that's the number one attribute that gets made fun of. So if you're busting the chopsticks of a fat Chinese gay guy, the first insult is about his sexuality. Then eventually you work your way down to the fat and then Chinese. Before you call GLAAD, let me say this. I have no problem with gay people. I'm open-minded, but closed behind it. I love the gays. All they do is pay taxes for schools and they don't use for prisons they don't inhabit, and to repair potholes their peach-colored Mini Cooper convertibles don't create. Meanwhile, they rarely use government programs and they don't crap out more kids that use us up our resources. In fact, they gobble up all the world's unwanted kids. They recycle like hell. Their cars always have a fresh coat of carnauba wax, and the lawns of their houses look like someone took tweezers and nasal hair clippers and firmly manicured them. Their homes look like country clubs. You don't see the gay guy with the El Camino up on blocks and a sofa rotting on the porch. Those are the Jews. Oh, confused? I thought you didn't buy into stereotypes. The gays take care of their homes and their community. As a group, they care about the environment. They are very civically minded and nonviolent. You don't need to worry about a gay guy putting a knife in your back at the ATM. Plus, they leave all the chicks for me. Hold this page up and high-five it. You want to live like a gay in the gay part of town? If you live in LA, all you need to know about the gays versus other groups can be determined by a drive down Santa Monica Boulevard. Santa Monica Boulevard is a long, filthy, graffiti-covered stretch of asphalt that cuts through the heart of Los Angeles, except for one 2-mile stretch that has medians with green grass, spotless sidewalks, and happy couples strolling with laptops and lap dogs. Al Gore is obsessed with big business and its carbon footprint. I'm obsessed with groups of their social footprint, and the gays have a small social footprint. This is a stereotype they've earned, and it's a good one. But another not so good one they've earned is on full display at the gay pride parades. The juxtaposition of people at these parades demanding respect while dressed in assless chaps is funnier than anything that hack John Waters could ever shit out. Don't worry, gays, your respect is coming. It's just around the corner. Continue dragging your gimp partner down the street by his nipple clamps. You'll soon get that respect you richly deserve. Society, in this close to accepting you and your life partner with the handlebar mustache and the studded leather thong. A quick pitch for the dictionary, folks. In the next edition, I would like to include a new definition for the word parade. Any more than 8 gays congregated together, that should be the term, like a flock of geese or a pod of whales. A parade of gays. Also, please add the term bayman, as in a man who has never been with another man still has an intact bayman. Allow me to make a controversial point to show that despite all the cries of how homophobic and intolerant our society is, we're actually very accepting. There's surprisingly little gay bashing based on how repugnant we find the act of gay sex. To be clear, I'm not saying that we should step up the gay bashing. I'm just saying it's surprising there's not more. Straight men have a visceral reaction to gay porn. I would rather witness a nun get lowered into a wood chipper than watch 10 seconds of gay porn. And this isn't just me. Dr. Drew, one of the most open-minded, tolerant guys in the world, confirms this. When straight guys see 2 dudes tongue kissing, they get nauseated. It's the way we're wired. When men are straight, we're straight. It's not like chicks who can become a lesbian on any given weekend. Heterosexuality for men in life is a sentence. For women, heterosexuality is like a club where they get their hand stamped but can come and go as they please. If you show a girl 2 dudes going at it, you'll get a like, ew. Show a straight guy a clip of glory, glory, hallelujah, and he'll be swept out of the room by the tidal wave of his own vomit. And it's not as if we have delicate sensibilities. The same guy who would rather poke his eyes out than watch 5 frames of cornholing is the same one who, if there is a clip of a firefighter getting a compound fracture in the octagon, not firefighter, just a fighter, will forward it to all of his buddies under the subject line, you gotta see this. So the fact that you think this is something that is universally physical, repugnant to straight guys, and yet virtually none of them, not counting the religious nut jobs, even ever raise a hand to gay men, and is a sign that we're evolved or super lazy. We're not the backward homophobic nation that some people paint us to be. Don't get me wrong, there's still progress to be made in this marriage and don't ask and don't tell department, but look at other countries. Over there, gays don't even have the right to exist, never mind adopt. The reason you don't ask and don't tell in Yemen is because they'll stone you to death or put a burning tire around you. And it can't get more damning than this. Every straight woman would rather watch 2 chicks going at it than gay porn. In other words, women who love cock and would rather watch a video with no cocks than one with 2 cocks. Let me wrap this up, guys. I love it when a black guy says something racist against white people and they call it reverse racism, as if white people were the only group capable of being real racist. White people didn't invent racism, we just perfected it. Next week we're going to read I Want My Future Back. Thank you. I'm Pop. And this is the Book of Carolla. In 50 years, we'll all be chicks. Happy Easter, and have a good one.